Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning, and welcome to For the Record. Today being Wednesday, the 23rd day of August 2017. For those of you school children who have been out on vacation, it's getting near to that time where you will be returning to school. For those of you who are still on vacation, you want to enjoy the few days that you have left if you're overseas or if you're doing a staycation here in the Cayman Islands. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor. My co-host in the studio with me this morning, Dr. Steve McPhail, also co-hosting with us, Mr. Gilbert McLean, and it is also a pleasure to have in the studio with us the Honorable Ezard Miller, Leader of the Opposition. You can join us in our conversation on For the Record by calling us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flow. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. If you do decide to call on the telephone, then you will be greeted by that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson as well. So without any further ado, I want to say good morning to my panel this morning. Also, a little housekeeping while we're at it. We expect to have Mr. Hamlin Stevenson on after the 8 o'clock news, and we will have a brief discussion with him about the farmers market, what is being done there, and some of the activities that are going to take place within the next few days as well. So I want to highlight that for you, for those of you who may be interested in that discussion, that he will be on with us and sometime after the news at 8 o'clock, after 8 o'clock. So without any further ado, I want to say good morning to my two co-hosts and good morning to the Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Ezard Miller. Doc, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. For the Record, and good morning to all and good morning to Mr. McLean, and good morning to the Honorable Mr. Ezard Miller, the Leader of the Opposition, and good morning to all your listeners and locally and those that are listening to you abroad.
Okay, Mr. McLean.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, OC, for once again being able to co-host here with you. And good morning to you, Mr. McPhail, and to Honorable Miller, who is here. I think he has changed the day. He normally used to be on a Thursday, but he's with us here on a Wednesday. But and either day is good.
Yeah, good morning, OC, and good morning to Mr. Gilbert and Dr. McPhail, and good morning to the listening public. Well, one of the things, again, that we're trying to organize in the opposition is that we've actually developed a roster for the members of the opposition to appear on all of the radio talk shows on a rotating basis. And we'll come on in two roles, one as the shadow minister discussing the areas of responsibility that I have delegated to them, and also to come in to talk about their constituency matters. So Thanks for having me. It's always good to be here to interact with the public. I'm OC. I don't know why you got a deck stacked against me so high. 3 hosts and me. One I should have brought Mr. McLean to hold up my left shoulder for me. But these are all friends, so I'm in good company.
Yep. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And then you can also share with our audience also the fact that what we plan on doing is having the opposition on Fridays instead of Wednesdays, and that will begin next week.
Yeah.
Yes, as well.
And we'll be on Thursdays on
Talk
today, and we'll be on Rooster on Tuesday. So, but I want the guys to be out there in the public, hearing what the public concerns are, and interacting and reacting to what the people want done, because they're who we represent. And if you don't talk to them, you can't know what they represent.
Well, at least we're hearing from someone, because we haven't heard from the government, much since the election, which is unfortunate. I do realize that you have new ministers who are in place and everything else, that they also had the summer holidays that came up and everything. But still, to me, the government has been extremely, extremely silent at a time when they should be reassuring the public in terms of what is happening. We can only assume to a certain extent, other than what we see in the news or hear on the news, what in terms of what is taking place. But we have not had that public face with the government, at least not on radio, not necessarily on television. Yes, we see some press coverage. We see coverage now with a lot of the counselors who are dealing with education, making appearances, talking to new teachers and about the school year and everything else. But again, the government is not taking advantage of the situation where they can really keep the public informed of what is happening. Now, hopefully, we'll hear some of that today, because today we will also have the first sitting of the first meeting of the Legislative Assembly for the 2017-2018 session, which will begin today. And again, I think we have done this before, but I like to reinforce things for the benefit of our listening and viewing audience. Mr. Miller, explain the difference between a sitting and a meeting. This is the first sitting of the first meeting.
Right. A sitting is a day. A meeting is a number of sittings, and then a session is annual, from May till April.
Okay.
Now, the strange thing about this first meeting of this session is that it's not an official opening of Parliament.
Okay. Is that unique? Is that unique?
Huh? That's very unique. Situation? Normally, the first meeting of any session, because remember, at the end of after each session is a year, and at the end of that session, the governor prorogues the House, and then she lists out puts out a
Prorogation.
No, she puts out then a call to a proclamation to call us back, right? And that first meeting is usually an official meeting, opening of the House, and you have the guards and all that kind of stuff. But
so the swearing-in ceremony that took place.
That is not really a meeting of the Assembly. That is a meeting that is called to constitute the Assembly.
Yes.
Now the Assembly is fully constituted. This is the first meeting of a fully constituted Assembly, because when we go down there that morning, we're just elected people. We're not really members of the Legislative Assembly yet. We go and take the oaths of office, etc., etc., and then the cabinet is appointed. And in this case, because the Premier didn't have a clear majority on any party, he had to be elected, which is what the Constitution provides for. And then we set up all of the standing committees of the House and all that. And that is just, all that is about is the business of actually completing the structure of the House. This is the first meeting that we'll deal with in a business for this session.
Okay. Any idea how long this meeting will last? What is likely to occur during this meeting?
That is, it seems
other than
that the government only intends to meet for 3 days.
Okay.
We have submitted a lot of business and from the opposition, and that doesn't appear to have gone down too well with the government, because they were of the view that this was just a session for the SPS and there was no other business. But we got to use whatever opportunity we get. Parliament meets so infrequently, right, that when we hear there's a meeting, we have to put in as much business as we can. We could wind up in a situation which would be unfortunate, but there's a possibility that it appears that the House might be adjourned on Friday evening or Friday night without having dealt with all of the business that was placed on the business paper and dealt with the business committee, which could mean a number of private members' motions don't get dealt with, because the standing orders provide that Thursday is reserved for private members' motions. So today we have the financial Minister of Finance and Development will present the SPS, and then the Premier will move a motion that the SPS be approved. Now, the PMFL law, I think, simply says that the SPS should be laid on the table for 60 days, and if nobody objects, it becomes policy. They don't have that. They never, ever has the SPS prepared in time for that. So he's moving a motion that it be accepted. That will be debated. Again, they expect, from hearing their position, is that they expect to complete that debate today, right? Oh. Because the SPS, other oppositions in the past has not taken the opportunity to debate the SPS. This opposition is going to take that opportunity.
Okay.
And I expect each of my members in the opposition to address their portfolio responsibilities and whether they are satisfied that the policies that is represented in the strategic policy statement in those areas are sufficient to deal with the issues facing the country. In the past, what normally happened is that the Premier would get up and move the SPS, and maybe the leader of the opposition would get up and say a few words, and it wasn't debated.
Yes.
Right? But remember now that this policy is the framework for the budget. And we run the risk that if we do not adequately debate the SPS when it comes to the budget time, and things that we expected to be in the budget are not there, the Premier can simply fall back and say, well, you had the opportunity in August to let us know, and you didn't do it.
So unlike the budget, which you have very little control of in terms of adding or subtracting, you certainly can't add more than what the government has allocated. As far as the strategic policy statement is concerned, you may possibly have some sway based on your debate in terms of the government amending.
Right. There are no rules that we can't amend the budget.
Yes.
The SPS.
The SPS.
But we can't amend it because it's the government's policy. But we can advocate and encourage them. And as my good friend from East End would say, we can beat them into submission sometimes to make some changes on it, right? So I want to make sure that the opposition takes the opportunity to debate it and also to inform the public, because it is very important that the public understands what is being represented in the SPS. And the public will not get that if it's not debated. If you just hear the SPS being presented as a speech, you don't pay a lot of attention. But if there's back and forth and debate, right, and arguing the points, then the public gets a better position of where the government is taking the budget. When the budget comes in, we can still debate it, but nobody will be able to say that we didn't take the opportunity to try to influence the strategic policy statement in the way that we believe that it should go.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Miller. Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. Two of my co-hosts in the studio with me this morning, Dr. Steve Macfield, Mr. Gilbert McLean, and we have the pleasure of having the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Ezard Miller, with us this morning. Please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back immediately after this short commercial break. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Dr. Steve Macfield, Mr. Gilbert McLean and Honorable Ezra Miller, Leader of the Opposition. We started off the show this morning by talking about the first sitting of the first meeting of the Legislative Assembly that will take place this morning, starting at 10 a.m., I believe. We trust that they will start on time. This new speaker has said that he will be, instilling strict rules and discipline within the Legislative Assembly, so we'll see what happens with that. There are two questions that I have.
Let me finish what the business is, right? So on
Sure.
Thursday, we have 8 private members' motions.
Okay.
And again, they say they're going to work, they expect to dispense of all them on Thursday. And then on Friday, we have to clean up the supplementary expenditure that was done for 14, 15, and 16. You will recall in February they brought them down there and they put on the order paper and we didn't complete it because the House was being dissolved. So they have to go back through the whole process. And that's basically the business portfolio. I don't know what happened to the political promises to amend the Builders Law and to amend the National Conservation Law, but none of that is before the House.
Okay. So you have a commitment that all of the private members' motions that have been approved will be dealt with.
But no, we will deal with what we can tomorrow. That's it.
That's it.
So it's going to be interesting then.
And what
to
happens
see.
to those motions afterwards? Unlike questions, when it's question time, if all questions have not been answered, what's the difference between a private member's motion being able to move forward later on as opposed to questions?
What I will do is any business that is not dispensed with, including private members' motions and questions, I will move a motion as is provided in the standing orders that business be set down for the next meeting so that it is preserved. Otherwise, it just falls away. You see? So I'm hoping that we get through all of the private members' business, because private members' business is very important to Parliament. The Legislative Assembly is not solely for the purpose of dispensing with government's generated business. Otherwise, the standing orders wouldn't allow for private members' motions and private members' bills and questions and all that sort of stuff. The Legislative Assembly is there to serve both groups. And remember that we represent a substantial number of people on the opposition side of the bench whose voices need to be heard.
Sticking with that statement that you just made, how much cooperation are you expecting to get from the government, and how much support are you expecting to get from the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly in terms of defending the rights of the opposition?
Well, I have declared that we will support what the government brings that is good. If we don't agree with something that the governments did, my mantra and my record shows that when I disagree with something, I offer a counter proposal, which I believe will make it better. And the fact that government often accepts the amendments that we file indicate that they must be better, because it would be foolhardy to accept something that would make something worse. I don't want and I don't desire any support from the Speaker. What I want the Speaker to do is to follow the rules. And the rules provide for specific protections for the minority in the Legislative Assembly. So I don't like to use the word support, because that would indicate some sort of bias, and that is not supposed to happen. It is going to be left to see how it functions out. But I intend to defend and hold the meetings to the standing orders when it comes on the opposition and the minority having an opportunity to have its say.
Okay. Dr. Steve, Mr. McLean, do you have any questions that you want to pose to the Leader of the Opposition in this regard?
Well, we'll see. I think Mr. Miller has pretty much covered the situation as I know it to be in the legislature, and I was just sort of marveling at the fact that that the government would believe that everything. And if I'm understanding that between now and Friday, all your motions, your 8 motions, including any debate on the SPS, the strategic policy statement, would be debated. Today's Wednesday. I mean, you're only talking about 2 days.
And it is strange to call a meeting with Parliament and have a specific closing date, other than when the Parliament is dissolved,
Exactly.
right? As opposed to, I don't know of any cases, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, where legislative assemblies or Parliament put business on a business paper, right? And the Parliament or legislative assembly is adjourned prior to that business being completed. It just does not argue
doesn't
well
fit.
for
No.
democracy.
No, it doesn't. And it seems to me that Parliament would only adjourn when the business on the paper is finished.
Yeah.
And
That's my position.
Yes.
That's my position. I think that's.
And your point about the Speaker is correct, because the Speaker is not the servant of the Crown. He's not the servant of the government, and he's not the servant of any party. The Speaker is the servant of the House, and the main role is to keep decorum. And it has been said, and that the Speaker is the presiding officer of the House. He's the key. He's the pivot on which the House revolves around, and therefore he should not be protecting anyone or giving anyone leverage. He's supposed to enforce the standing orders and to protect the minority in the House, because, as you have said, that the minority represents a large number of people who do not have a voice in the administration of the government administration, and that is the reason why they are the minority, because they did not have the amount of votes in the legislative assembly to form a government, but they represent the other part of the legislative assembly who's not in the government. And I really have to recommend you again and commend you again for organizing the opposition in the method and in the spirit and in the conventions of the Westminster system of government. I know that some people probably do not understand that, and you are going to have problems, but so be it. And either people learn or they don't learn. Mm-hmm. It's growing, and I'm surprised that some people who get elected do not understand how the Westminster system of government works.
And the fact that this is the first time that, although we've had the position of leader of the opposition and an official opposition in the Legislative Assembly from 2001, when you all set Parliament aside, where you had the government on the left when you come in the door and the opposition on the right, which is normal.
But it is the first time to be formally arranged.
Right. So you see, but the point I mean, all of those years, the opposition didn't grow, and the people didn't get used to the idea of what to expect from the opposition. So that's my biggest fight, is to try to get things organized and to try to get respect for the opposition. And the leader of opposition, the mere fact that they're number 11 on the precedence is ridiculous. And then you have situations where, unfortunate, I come here to go and talk today, right? As the leader, not as the leader of opposition, but and I meet the High Commissioner from India at the door, and I'm introduced to him as leader of the opposition when there's no official protocol for these. And all of these people coming here should be invited to meet with the leader of opposition. I should be invited to meet with them.
Okay. Exactly.
We have to go to our news at this point in time. Folks, I want to remind you, listening to For the Record, sorry, I'm your host, Art Connor. My guest with me this morning, leader of the opposition, Honorable Ezard Miller. My two co-hosts, Dr. Steve Macfield, Mr. Gilbert McLean. Please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back immediately after the news. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I have to be very long-winded this time around because we have additions to our panel here in the studio as we promised. So we have with us the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Ezard Miller, and I'm trying to take this in order of precedence.
Way down the board, my number 11, number 11.
We also have with us former member of the Legislative Assembly, former minister, former civil servant, Mr. Gilbert McLean. We have Dr. Steve McFeel, prominent attorney and constitutional scholar and constitutional expert as well. It is also a pleasure to have in the studio with us now Mr. Hamlin Stevenson, who is the chairman of the board of the Farmers and Artisans Retail Market, FARM. And we also have with us Ms. Krista Whitaker, who is the assistant manager for marketing at Cayman National Bank. We're going to be talking exclusively now about the farmers and artisans retail market, their activities. And when I spoke to Mr. Hamlin Stevenson about appearing on the show, he recalled that there may have been a conversation on For the Record, someone calling in about the price of a breadfruit at $6. And I believe my comment was on that was whether or not demand and supply was, was actually working in that instance, if there was a shortage of breadfruits or what. So without any further ado, I want to say good morning. Welcome to For the Record to Ms. Whitaker and Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you for having us this morning, OC. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and I want to hand the mic right over to you so that you can place your agenda on the table, Mr. Stevenson.
Okay, this week have been set aside for appreciation. It's an appreciation week for all of our customers at the market. It started on Monday and it continued through until Saturday. We are inviting everyone to come out and see what the market is like until Friday and Saturday will be a special day for the customers to come in. I've asked all the vendors to lower their price. I don't know if it will happen, but I've asked them to. Today is a special day. Chris, you want to speak about today and tomorrow?
Sure.
Get that.
Yeah, so today we're going to have food at the market on sale by the Georgetown Heritage Day folks. They're out there selling their food, I believe, from 11.
Yeah.
And there's also tomorrow, which we have a special plant sale. Mr. Hamlin later on can speak about what plants are on sale, but there's a whole variety of them, and also a special showcase on local preserves. There was a class that was done in Department of Agriculture, and so they're going to showcase those preserves. And then throughout the entire day and week, there's just lots of surprises and fun giveaways. And Cayman National Bank, we partnered with him and we're giving out some bags so that if you do purchase anything, you have something to put it in. And yeah, there's just a lot of fun and you never know what you're going to get. There's lots of surprises. There could be some giveaways from the vendors as well.
Those bags, are you reusable bags?
Reusable
as well?
bags,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, I know that market has become extremely popular. I hear some of my friends I know who have basically standing orders for coconut water and things of that nature. Yep. How long since this location has actually been up and running, and how much has it contributed to providing more of an outlet, not only for the retailers, but also for those customers who come there?
We've been in operation since November 2015.
Okay.
So it's almost 2 years now we've been operating. For vendors, all farmers who are interested, there's a space there for them. For the artisan people, for crafts and art, right now we have 3 of those out there. You can get your huge ground basket to go into the lawn like Ezra would like one, so you can stop by there and get
hanging
one.
up in my workshop.
I have at least 3 at home.
Made in
3
outside. Mine made in outside. The tax in outside is tougher and stronger.
And you can get a lot of other crafts out there. Now, for the customers, especially Friday and Saturdays, those are days when you find the market operating. From Friday, it's open from around 8 o'clock. Customers are there. As a matter of fact, I crossed there this morning at 7:30, and there was one vendor out there and about 6 customers around him.
Wow.
So some people are coming in earlier than I thought. Saturday is the bigger day of the market. It's open from 6 and it can continue right through until 7. I've been there almost every hour of the day. I've crossed by or stop in, and it's quite active. So it's been a huge benefit for the farmers and artisans, and also for the customers. People are coming in, they're finding fresh, local grown stuff, which a lot of the customer really do appreciate.
Okay. Ms. Whitaker, tell us again about CNB's interest in this project. What spurred your interest in this?
Yeah, okay. Well, as the local bank, I mean, we like to support local whenever we can. And we realize the need to develop agriculture on the island, and also to provide some sort of outlet for these farmers to showcase and sell their products, because they're working hard, they're growing these crops, it's not easy. So we knew that there had to be a space, and specifically in Georgetown, that was very important for us. So combined with that and Mr. Hamlin's passion for really wanting to get this off the road, it was kind of the perfect fit for us to just sort of help him get this up and running, and then support it as it continued throughout the years. So we just really wanted to support him, the local community, agriculture as a whole, and also placing this in Georgetown was a good thing for us, because we needed that type of thing in Georgetown. And with the whole revitalization of Georgetown, like, this just was kind of one thing that could potentially help Georgetown become what it's supposed to be.
Okay. Mr. Miller, even though it's not question time in the LA yet, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask a question if you want to. Mr. Stevenson.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make Mr. Hamlin and others know that I fully support, and I've always supported the idea of the farmers market there. And I myself go there quite often and enjoy it. And there's a couple of vendors there who know me by name, and you always got to buy a little bit their wares. But it's and I think it's a great thing. I am sure, and I know that some of the farmers from the eastern end of the island bring their produce down there and stuff. So,
okay, my two co-hosts, any questions to ask?
I greatly support it, and I thought it was a big mistake when you moved it from out of town and took it out to Savannah, because it put it out of the reach of many people, and mostly, and when you go around the Caribbean areas, you see there are markets everywhere. It's the heartbeat of the I would say the other economic system, because there are several economic systems integrating with each other, and it's I don't want to say the word, but it's the heartbeat of the other economic system, where people can go and buy things that they need immediately, and use them instead of having to go to the supermarkets and buy things that are so expensive that are imported. And I'm so happy to see that we're getting back to the times when we, depending on our agriculture, we were almost an agricultural, dependent on agricultural in years ago, and then somehow it got to the place where people told us, "Oh, you can't grow anything here," and stuff in agriculturists will never make it. And that was because they wanted to bring things from abroad so they could mark it up and sell it. And I'm glad to see that Mr. Hamlin has brought this back and has put it into the Caribbean context again. The only thing that I would ask is, if CNB has any notion or any interest in helping the small farmers with small loans to clear their lands and encourage the young people to get into farming, because there's a lot of money now in hydroponic farming now, and just I was 2 years ago, I think it was, when I was part of the Boundary Commission, the Electoral Boundary Commission. We went up to the eastern area to define the boundaries, between eastern and north side, and I was amazed to see the amount of farmland. Thousands of acres of it. and unused in the Eastern District that could be used for farming, we could almost produce more than half of the farming, the food that we consume here, including chickens and including eggs and all that sort of stuff. And I'm so grateful that Mr. Hampton did this. I know this is his life thing. He's been talking about this for years and years and years, and I'm glad that he's now in the position where he's fruition, because sometimes you live your whole life and the thing that you really live for, you don't get the enjoyment of it before you go. And I'm so happy that you have come to the place where you have it's live, and now you're trying to expand it. I'm a small farmer myself because I have my greenhouse and I grow my stuff, but I have not been to the farm to sell anything because I usually give my stuff away to my families.
Okay. We have one caller on hold, and we want to give Mr. McLean an opportunity for a question, but since Mr. Stevenson has to leave early, I think, can we take that call, Ms. Susan? Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to everybody there. And lady, I think I heard her lady's voice.
Yes, good morning. That's Ms. Krista Whitaker, yes.
Okay, first of all, I would like to congratulate him on the farmers market. It's new, but it's not new to us. I mean, we've been there a year or two or better now. So I want to congratulate him. It was well needed, especially in the district of Georgetown, where most everything takes place. But and as I say, they're doing a good job with it. But I also would like to make a comment on pertaining to the agriculture and different things. About 3 Saturdays ago, I think it is now, I was heading to the Eastern District, and I was no more upset and had more shame in my life. And I got up by the airport it was around about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know where they were from, but they're making us look like we're worse than a third world country. There were somebody out selling local white shank crabs in a fish pot out by the front of our airport. Now, I think that is a disgrace, and I think that I was asking Ezra to see if he can make a law, because we're looking now like the rest of the Caribbean, with all these shacks all over the place, packed up all in the street. We need to make it some kind of mandatory that they must go into some form of building, or they should go to the market and sell their products from there, because it is a disgrace. See, every time around now, all you can see is all these people on the side road selling these touch-up roofs all over the place, and it looks very disgraceful, and Cayman shouldn't be coming to this. We should not allow other people to come into our country and carry us down that road, because we tried to maintain it, and we need to do something about it.
Point well taken, caller. Thank you very much for that. We're going to take a commercial break, and we hope that Mr. Stevenson can stay a little longer with us so that he can respond to that as well. Please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back immediately after this short break. Press the pause button if you have to, but don't change the dial. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In addition to having the Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Ezra Miller, in the studio with us, we also have the pleasure of having Mr. Hamlin Stevenson, who is the chairman of the board of the Farmers and Artisans Retail Market. And we also have with us Ms. Krista Whitaker, who is the assistant manager for marketing at Cayman National Bank. Previous caller had some good points, some of which had been actually discussed prior to going live on the show as well. We have one more caller. So again, before Mr. Hamlin leaves us, let's take that caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Connor.
Good morning, sir.
And to all your guests there, Honorable Miller. And this is Franklin Smith.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say that congratulate Mr. Hamlin. While I do not sell there, I sell to a lot of the retailers.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to mention that I heard Ezra, the minister, our opposition minister, say that talking about he commented on the East End farms and things, and that was good, because while I developed 55 acres, the majority of that is still in farming today with 2 homes built on it. And a lot of the produce from all of my farming area comes from this development. And I now have another 12 acres available, and I'm hoping Cayman National will see favorable to give loans to people who want meet their qualifications but who wants to buy farmland.
Specifically for farming?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
Well, they can build a home on it too, but out of the 55 acres, there's only 2 homes that has been built.
And they can still have their fruit trees and all that you maintain.
Yes,
all that. Right?
Everything, you know. So because it's good farmland, I try to keep it in farming.
Okay.
All right, man. Good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Any comments on that, Ms. Whitaker?
I mean, of course, we're always willing to get customers in for land loans. It's actually land loans and mortgages that we really try to push. We're not big on car loans. I mean, again, we do that where a bank will do it and accommodate it to qualified customers, but we really try to push land and mortgage. Again, can't stress enough that we are the local bank, so we want our local people to have land, whether it is for farming or for building a house or a business. Like, that is something that we greatly pride ourselves in. We have a lot of customers that are also at the market that, you know, are our own customers. So that was another reason why we supported the farmers market. So always encouraging land loans. So come on in.
Well, not to put you on the spot, but would there be any area for a negotiation in terms of a person who's purchasing land specifically for agricultural purposes, where the possibility of returns on their investment are likely to be a little bit slower, which means that they may need to have a different payment plan for a business that is, certainly more active?
Sure. I mean, I know we always work with our customers whenever we can. So negotiating rates and payments, monthly payments, is something that they work well with customers with. So, I mean, I can't speak for the entire loans team, but I'm pretty sure that we can negotiate something with each customer. It's on a case-by-case basis. We don't really have preferred rates. It's kind of done on a case-by-case, but again, it's always something that if that's what you need, we're going to try to accommodate you.
Okay. Mr. McLean, we promised to give you an opportunity to ask a question.
Yes, well, O.C., thank you. I just want to say that I absolutely support the idea of agriculture. I've had the opportunity as a minister to play a part in it, and I do some farming myself. And it's good to know that our Cayman National Bank has taken an interest as the local bank in this whole affair. And that is encouraging. And as Steve has mentioned, you know, one time you grew stuff and you just couldn't sell it. You had to give it away. But now, as I see it, it's whatever you grow, you can virtually sell and sell for a very good price. And of course, things like the various meats now as well. The supermarkets are taking it. One time supermarkets wouldn't take it, but now it's not possible to keep up with the local demand. So things have really changed dramatically. And one thing to another point that Steve made was that agriculture is no longer the back-breaking effort with the pick and the hoe. It's scientific. You make greenhouses and so on, and you can increase your production and so on by having a knowledge in whatever you're doing. Say if it's shrimp farming or whatever the case may be, it is a science, and I'm personally pleased to see that there are so many more people that's understanding that now and taking that kind of approach to it.
Okay. Well, Ms. Whitaker, I want to thank you for coming in. I want to thank CNB for their role in the role that they're playing in this. But I also want to give you an opportunity for some closing comments before you leave as well.
Thanks for having us again. We just want to encourage everybody to come out to the market. Specifically today, everybody needs lunch. There's going to be food out there for everybody. Again, it's being done by the Georgetown Heritage Day folks. So come on out, get some food, visit the vendors. Again, lots of surprises throughout the week, giveaways. Cayman National Bank has a little bag that we're giving out to everybody that visits there, and you can put your purchased items in there. Tomorrow is the plant sale. I'm hearing there's desert rose plants, lots of fruit trees, mangoes, and there's tons of things on sale with special prices. I think it's 25% off most of the plants. So yep, and also the preserves. There's a special showcase of those that were made at a class at Department of Agriculture. So just to encourage everybody to come out and support the local farmers and get some goodies while you're at it.
Okay. Well, again, we want to wish you all the best. And for those of you who are listening, if you're interested in a loan, check out CNB. You may be able to get some good rates on a piece of property, especially if you're interested in agriculture. Again, all the best, Ms. Whitaker.
In Franklin is selling selling them lots at a reasonable price too.
Yes,
and Ms. Whitaker, I am interested in leasing at least 150 acres of land and doing a coconut farm, because I think that is necessary right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then plant coconut trees. So in the next 3 or 4 years, we will have a crop of coconuts that we will be able to. Because I see people running around to people's homes now and trying to.
They're stealing them. They come north side every weekend. You can't get a dry coconut north side now, save your life. Because they come in on the weekend in these trucks and load them up. There's one guy that he can hardly steer the truck when he's on his way back out. He got so many coconuts on the back of it.
That green truck.
I mean, I caught him stealing mine, and the police refused to, and the DPP refused to prosecute the person.
Me too.
Okay.
And if the man come and ask me, I'd probably give him a coconut tree. But you just can't come and drive up your truck and steal my coconuts, man. Come on.
That's a problem.
We're going to take a commercial break now, and when we return, we will continue our discussion with the Honorable Ezard Miller, Leader of the Opposition. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Mr. Stevenson and Ms. Whitaker have left the studio at this point in time. Again, we want to encourage you, our listening or viewing audience, to support the farmers and artisans retail market in their activities. Today, the Georgetown Heritage Group having a food sale today, and tomorrow there will be a plant sale as well. So again, support your local industries, as well. We're going to continue our discussion now with the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Ezard Miller. We want to talk about the activities of the Public Accounts Committee, of which he is also the chair. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, well, one of the concerns that I had and the committee had during the last administration was whether the recommendations of the Auditor General and those of the Public Accounts Committee were actually being implemented and at how well they were progressing. So we had asked the Auditor General to do a report on the last 8 reports that we tabled to find out how the recommendations were going. So the last week we've been meeting about those, and actually we had some departments in government that did very, very well. For instance, the management of travel and hospitality expenditure, which was a report that was done, they got most of their recommendations in place.
Okay.
The government IT security, people will happy to know that most of their recommendations are either all implemented or in progress.
But we haven't been able to protect those fiber optic lines.
Well, I mean, tobacco is a dangerous thing, right? Major capital projects, recommendations on procurement and all that, they've got most of that done. Management of the nation building program, again, most of that was done. We have some others who were giving an amber light who are in progress but not really doing as well, which was the financial and performance reporting of the entire public sector and the national land development and government real property. there were some recommendations made, and they really haven't acted on, and some of that has to do with the sale of what they term strangely government surplus properties. And then we had some who got raided who actually haven't done anything, basically. And those were the government recommendations on the government programs supporting those in need. And this was all the way back. And all of this stuff was done in 2015 now,
Okay.
So it's been a substantial period of time. And the other one was the collecting government revenue. So we'll be tabling this morning now our report on, and we've had some public hearings on it. Unfortunately, because the ministry wouldn't release the outline business case prepared by KPMG to look at the whole welfare system in government to the committee, for us to have it to consider what was being proposed. We've actually deferred that hearing until September the 6th, and we promise that we will have the document after Cabinet approves it or throws it out by the 30th, so we'll have time to study it, and then we'll have bring the people back in and look at it and see. But it is important that the civil servants and the government be given praise when they do the things that we expect them to do. Because the whole point of this is not to embarrass people, and that's why we're trying to reduce the style of the language and make it more cooperative and a more cooperative spirit. So those departments that I named out that were given a green light will actually get a congratulatory letter from me as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee saying that we're proud that they've actually implemented these things.
Okay. We see, again, and this has been remarked by my two co-hosts as well, a completely different approach when it comes to the role of the opposition in our legislative assembly. That is refreshing, and we hope to see more of it, and we hope also that the government finds and appreciates the new approach that is being taken as well.
Yeah, I would much rather, as leader of opposition, be in an informed position to be able to support the government in what it's going to do. But if you want me to be in a position to support you, you have to involve me in the development process. You just can't plonk a 50 clause, 25-page or 30-page law on my desk on a Friday morning for me to debate Friday evening, expect that I'm going to get up and support it. I was trained by Mr. Benson. He taught me how to look, scan, read, but look for important information and then highlight it and come back to it. So, although, we get these big documents, there's usually only a couple of pages in it that is really important. The rest of it is information overload, trying to hide what they're really trying to do, right? But it is, I have suggested that as you know, that me and the Premier sit down once a month and have a little powwow. The things that he's thinking about, his government is thinking about doing, the things that my group is concerned about. Unfortunately, he hasn't had time to do it yet. I've also been invited by the Deputy Governor to have a similar kind of relationship with him in terms of the whole civil service and the areas of his responsibility, because I'm also the shadow minister for his stuff. Okay. Because again, I believe that we can succeed. My grandmother used to say, "You catch more flies with honey than vinegar." Be assured that if the need arises to vociferously oppose the government, I will do so. But my approach has always been more of a conciliatory approach, and let's try to come to a consensus. Now, I have strong views. Everybody knows that about Ezra. If you ask me what today, and I can tell you, well, I'm not sure it could be Wednesday, it could be Thursday. I can tell it's been Wednesday since 12 o'clock last night, right? And if you ask me next week, it can still be Wednesday since 12 o'clock last night if you ask me on that particular day. And I'm not ashamed of my views. One of my favorite subjects in university was decision making. And I tell everybody, I respect any decision you make if I can audit it. If there's a trail that I can see how you got to that decision, I will respect your decision. I might not agree with it, because I might have information related to that decision that you might not have when you made it. So I have a responsibility to make that information available to you if I want to change your decision. But what I don't caught into is arbitrary decision making, and when you try to drill down, it's just eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch whatever by the toe, and you move forward. So I'm still trying, and the opposition group is, in spite of what you might read in the media, is coming together quite nicely. We argue strongly as independent minds on issues, but we come to consensus on a decision, and that's the way. And it takes time to get these things and get relationships built with people. If you hear me and Mr. McLean arguing, you would swear we're the greatest enemies in the world, But that's not. But we argue to get to a consensus, and we're not afraid to defend our position, and that's what I'm trying to coach and develop in the opposition.
Okay, we're going to go to a commercial break in the next few minutes, but I will sort of like prep you for the next question. You mentioned about government lands, and those who listened to the Public Accounts Committee hearings and stuff would have heard about disposal of land. And I want to ask the question in terms of Section 38 of our Constitution, or what one minister in the UK Parliament referred to as a settlement. A settlement with the territories, a constitutional settlement. Section 38 reads, subject to any law for the time being enforcing the Cayman Islands, the governor or any person duly authorized by him or her in writing under his or her hand may, in Her Majesty's name and on Her Majesty's behalf, make and execute under the public seal grants and disposition of any land or other immovable property within the Cayman Islands that may be lawfully granted or disposed of by Her Majesty. And we want to see what is being done or what is being proposed, whether or not that is in concert with Section 38 of our Constitution. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me, my two co-hosts, Dr. Steve Macfield and Mr. Gilbert McLean, and it is our pleasure to have the Honorable Ezard Miller, Leader of the Opposition, with us. We're now talking about the disposal of government property, government land, and Mr. Miller, I read Section 38 to you before the break.
Yeah, I think the Constitution says there must be a law. I think the law that governs the sale of government property is called Government Investing of Lands Law.
Yes.
And you will remember for years and years, Miss Anna Hulda-Borden, or certainly Gilbert, and you might have been in New York, but and I keep in touch with Cayman in days. But,
always kept
Gilbert and Steve will remember Miss Anna Hulda-Borden's consistent argument in Parliament that only the Legislative Assembly must sell government land.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in recent times, there's been an amendment to the Governor Vesting in Lands law, which allows Cabinet, under certain circumstances, to dispose of government property. If my memory serves me correctly, that those circumstances are it has to be educational or agricultural, but don't hold me to that because I'm trying to speak from memory. But the problem we have now is that you will remember when the government commissioned E&Y, Ernst & Young, to do this consultant report on ways to cut down government expenditure and increase government revenue when we were in the deficit position, depending on who you talk to, what the deficit was and what wasn't.
Right.
One of their recommendations was to generate quick cash, was to dispose of what they term government surplus property. In other words, any property that was not at the current time under specific use for government, they regarded as surplus property. Now that definition troubles me and the Public Accounts Committee.
Property.
Right, because I don't think that there's such
How
a thing
can
as
you have surplus property?
Exactly. But
Exactly so.
the truth is that while I believe they sold some pieces of the property that were on that list, because it was over 200 parcels of land, we cannot argue today when the government is boasting of $100 million surpluses and $90 million surpluses, that there is a need to generate cash. So why are we wanting to liquidate assets that are not costing the government anything to maintain, but are increasing in value on a daily basis? Because land, the good Lord not making any more Cayman right now. You know what these developers come here and pop up and claim that they're building land, right? So this is not going to go down in value. It is, in most instances, it's not costing the government anything or very little to maintain this property. So the Public Accounts Committee, in its report that is being tabled today, and the reason I'm saying this now is because it was all done in public hearings, is making a recommendation that the government reconsider that policy decision, right, or reverse that policy decision and not sell government land, because they wrote out to representatives January or February this year with the list of properties that was for sale in your constituency. And at the January meeting of the Northside District Council, a decision was taken to recommend to government that no property owned by government in the Northside electoral district be sold. But I see that they have included certain pieces of property to be sold. And I'm going to write another letter again to the minister to say that, listen, we in the Northside community do want our land sold. Some of the things, for instance, that they recommended be sold are house lots in a couple of subdivisions. Now, I believe that in several of those cases, it is possible to subdivide that sublot into 2 or 3 lots and build low-cost housing on it. And I'm not talking about low-cost housing. I'm talking about 800-900 square foot house that can be sold to low-income people for $80,000 and $90,000. I don't regard a $285,000 house as a low-cost house.
No.
So why are we going to sell these properties when we can use them for things like that? Again, in my district, we have the preposterous idea that oceanfront, beachfront property is on this list to be sold.
Really?
You know? And for instance, there's a small piece of beachfront on Old Robin Road, just before you get to the Queen's Monument, right?
Yes.
And that's on the list. And that's the only piece of public beach property between the Miller's Graveyard on Old Robin Road and the Reef Hotel, you know? So why there can be no justification to selling that, you know? I mean, they've allowed the neighbor to take it over, and I'm trying to get that sorted out, but there's still no reason to sell it. The old Teachers Cottage site in the vicinity of the William Poochen Memorial Church, which is the site that we recommended in 2012 that the government assist us in building a daycare center for senior citizens, because that's what the senior citizens in Northside say they want. They don't want a living facility where their families can just farm them off and forget about them, right? It's being sold, and that's beachfront property as well, you know? And I don't know what rationale they're using to determine and who's going to value this property. And our concern is that if the property is being going sold, it should be done in a totally public environment. So this list of stuff, because it was given to the Public Accounts Committee, will be made public today when I table the report, because it's going to be attached to that report, right? And I do not support any private treaty by anybody, I don't care who you are, to buy any government land in this case. Because look at Mr. Gilbert's Bordentown, the old clinic piece of property.
Yeah, Ms. Jester Rich, the old clinic.
Yeah, which is a beautiful little piece of property that could be developed for all those people in Cumnor Avenue, and you could put little cabanas on it, and it's something that the community would get involved
That's on
with.
the seaside also, right?
Yeah, that's beach property.
It's beach.
You know, but it's on the auction. Are these things going to be auctioned with a minimum price based on government evaluation? We don't know. Nobody can tell us in the PAC how these things are going to be done. And that is not acceptable to the Public Accounts Committee. This thing should be open and transparent.
Well, OC, and if I may
Sure,
comment
sure,
on
Mr. McLean.
what Mr. Miller said, by chance it was last week, I was driving along and I changed from one station and went to 105.3, and what I found there was that the actual live discussion of the Public Accounts Committee. And I must say, Mr. Miller, that I truly appreciate the many things that you do yourself, and in this case also there was the MLA Christopher Saunders, who were making it quite clear that they did not support the sale of government's land. And me as a citizen, me as a person who has been in government before, me as a person who has been in the most recent election here, I utterly, absolutely am against the whole concept. How can the people have surplus land? I mean, because the government doesn't have a building on a piece of crown property today, does it mean that next year that we won't have need to build a building on that? To me, it is stupid, it's ignorant, and I think, personally, it is serving the purpose of a handful of people who I suspect are lined up to buy those properties, particularly beach properties. We seem not to understand that we are growing into a reservation type of thing, where the thing that we had the most of and greatest access to, the beach, is going. There is no longer any access to our beach, to our sea, and like Mr. Miller spoke about the old Miss Jesse's, where the old clinic was. I had that surveyed when I was minister, and that is there. It's a beautiful beach down there. There is another one above that. Well, there's two places between about 100 or 50 feet or 200 feet in between that they want to sell. I saw, looking at the papers that Mr. Miller had there, Little Cayman, which has virtually, it seems, been bought by one individual now, on the assistance of those who should be thinking of keeping some of it, who are in public office. There is one piece there, an acre and a half, that is up for sale. Why sell it? I mean, since so much land in Little Cayman, waterfront property on the beach, since so Little Cayman has virtually been sold and there are a few little fragments left, why not leave that so that the people from Cayman Brac who go across there fairly regularly to picnic and so on can at least have access to the beach, and even people like us from Grand Cayman can go there and have some place that we can go.
So true. We have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Two callers. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning. Back to you, gentlemen. Sorry to call back the second time.
That's okay.
All regarding the sale of government land. Government can't lease land no more, or what? Or we can't lease land no more, because I don't hear about talking about leasing. Everything is like, sell it.
Good point.
Lease it to more them and have it still belong to people and still be able to do what they want to do with it if they want to, because they can't put the land up, but at least it'll still be ours.
Yep.
I don't know what to do these people, because all you can hear is buy. But when they sell it today, gone tomorrow, the money is all good for today. I mean, $1 million not nothing, or $2 million not nothing, Cayman no more. So I don't know why they sell everything, why they don't lease it.
Exactly.
Yep.
And Mr. Ezra, keep fighting. That's all I can tell everybody. Keep fighting. If we don't have for something, we can fall for everything.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much, caller, for that.
True.
Next caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O.C.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning.
And good morning to Honorable Ezard Miller. And good morning to Mr. Gilbert McLean and Dr. Steve McField.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good
Hope
morning.
you all are doing well. This is Georgia Lee Banks.
Good morning.
Honorable Ezard Miller, it makes my heart very glad this morning to hear you speaking against the sale of government land. Imagine access to the beach. Where is that? They've taken that away from us. And several places, pieces of property that you mentioned. I think they should never, ever be sold. And may God forgive me if I'm making a judgment, but I'm sure there will be people waiting in line, to use an expression, to gobble up whatever land that government would go and sell.
Mm-hmm.
And it grieves my heart. And I beg you, Honorable Ezra Miller, push as hard as you can to try to stop the sale of these pieces of property. And may God bless you and give you wisdom and knowledge. So I know you're not just for North Side, you're for all the people on our island. And God bless all of you there in the studio and all the people on our three islands.
Thank you very much, man. God bless you too.
Thank you very much, Ms. Georgette, for that. We're going to take a commercial break now.
Just one.
Sure.
In Mr. Marco Archer, Strategic Parliament Statement 2016-2017, operating surplus. The PMF requires that the government maintain a positive operating surplus over the next 3 years. The core government is forecast to remain in compliance with this agreement. Operating surplus is forecast at 44.9 million 2016-17, 110.7 million 2018, and 119 million in 2019. Why do we need that land?
Yeah. Okay, we have one caller. We're going to ask that caller to hang in there. We're going to take a commercial break. As soon as we return from that commercial break, we will take your call. Please stay tuned.
On Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have one caller. Before we go to that caller, here's a quote from the great Desmond Tutu. When the missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. They said, "Let us pray." We closed our eyes. When we opened them, we had the Bible and they had the land. Cayman Islands, be careful. Yeah. Don't close your eyes until you know that you still have the land.
And every single, now we have 19 constituencies. There are lots of land located in every one of them. I'm calling on every Caymanian now who has a representative to call your representative and says, is the government land in my constituency on the auction block? And make representation to them, tell them you don't want it sold. No. These little small parcels of land that they claim are landlocked and useless can be developed into parks and all recreational areas for the communities and all this kind of stuff.
And if we had those advisory district councils in place, then they would be able to have a say in this as well. Let's go.
Our district council decided in January this year we don't want any, and that was communicated to the government, but they still have them. They reduced the amount, but they still have them on.
Okay, let's take the caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going?
Fine. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good. Quincy Brown here, calling from the Brat. You know what you've just said, Mr. O.C., I find it to be rather poignant in that our land, we closed our eyes and now we're left. I'm able to follow. But what I'm here to say is the majority of land on the island of which I'm making this call, Cayman Brac, is still owned by Brackers. You see, I can't say the same thing down in Grand Cayman. I realize that, and in my best African accent, I want you to know that I have friends who are both black and white, and we have to live together and to make sure. But I see your point, yes, and it will happen here, and I think the almighty dollar, you see, and we're living under the capitalist system. So nothing is going to change, not in the interim, not in the immediate. Why I've called this morning, though, is I promised Mr. McLean that for the next few sessions, when I do call in, I'm actually perusing his manifesto of 30 years ago, and I'm getting so much good information from it. And I want to find out, Mr. McLean, if I can very quickly, why is it, well, perhaps this should be directed to the leaders of the day, but you had a very good suggestion 30 years ago, Mr. McLean, when you were very successful here in the Bracken Little Cayman, to establish an information and communications policy to comprehensively inform the people of the Cayman Islands, namely Cayman Bracken Little Cayman, through improving and broadening the government information services, GIS, to enable greater public awareness. I suggested to Governor Stuart Jack that the BRAC kind of have its own GIS and media liaison through the BRAC branch of the police. He said that he would look into it. It not happened yet. But that's a good idea you brought 29 years ago, Mr. McLean. And if I may, just two more, and then I'll hang up. I won't hog the microphone. It's not my show. You suggested that you improve and update the standards of our tourism services by establishing comprehensive and ongoing training programs, whilst encouraging the development of first-class hotels, cottages, guest houses, and Caymanian entertainment, culinary arts and crafts. And let me tell you, here on Cayman Bracken Little Cayman, that has actually taken off. Within the past 15, 20 years, we're seeing more cottages being built. I'm here to say, though, that Little Cayman's tourism, see, we don't hear much about Little Cayman. Little Cayman's tourism is doing far better than Cayman Brac. And finally, and I'll be quiet and shut my mouth, you said 30 years ago that you would provide a comprehensive healthcare service to the people of the Cayman Islands, irrespective of economic background. Well, Minister Gilbert McLean, former minister, it was under your watch that Cynical came into play. But, oh my goodness, do we have issues with that. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you very much, Quincy. We have two callers. We're going to ask those callers to be brief because we want to give the Leader of the Opposition an opportunity for some closing comments as well. But we are going to accommodate the three now, I'm told, three callers. So please be as brief as possible. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so glad that this issue has come up again with regard to the ownership of land in the Cayman Islands. Mm-hmm. I am aware that Chris Saunders, I think, is bringing a motion to the House with regard to the foreclosures, and he's approaching the lands law. But I think the lands law probably needs to be looked at in its entirety with regard to foreign ownership of property in the Cayman Islands. And I think the whole thing needs to be amended so that we can retain our rights to our lands. Mm-hmm. And there are ways and means of doing it. If they need to get suggestions from other places around the world and in the Caribbean, then they need to do that, because our lands are quickly slipping away from our hands. And it's evident everywhere you look. I was just listening to Quincy, and he may want to look back into that particular thing that he said, that most of the land in Cayman Brac is owned by Cayman Brackers. That might be so, but it's quickly being removed from the hands of Cayman Brackers as well. So I just thought maybe Ezard could maybe bring a further motion with regard to this land law rather than limited it to just one thing, and do it in its entirety. That's my little spiel for the day. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, caller. Next caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Right. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Alice May here. God bless you all. You're very quick here. My heart just pounds when I hear government wanting to sell what little bit of land that is left here for the people of the Cayman Islands. As you know, the concerned citizens, we have tried for God knows how many decades to save our beach accesses. I'm wondering, Mr. Ezard, is there a list of all of these little surplus properties that are going to be put on the auction block, that we, the public, can identify them more readily? Or is it just going to be sort of a big surprise as we hear so-and-so has bought such and such a piece of land?
Well, we raised this issue to the Public Council Committee last year, and we didn't have the opportunity to publish the document that was presented to us at that time. But we are going to publish the list as part of the Public Accounts Report today.
Okay, so we, the public, will be seeing that very shortly.
Yeah, well, it depends on, unfortunately, the media here are very selective in the news that they cover. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there are forces within the community that may not want this information to get out. So I'm not going to rely very heavily on the media to promote these, but we will do our best.
Okay, now about the Government Information Service, and then I will go. I think that needs to be putting the news out there much more frequently and up to date than it is, because sometimes it takes weeks before a government topic, I will say, appears on that. And that should be used every day, updated with everything that's happening. So some fire needs to be put under the feet of whomever controls that. Mr. Ezard, please keep fighting hard. We appreciate all of you who do that. And we are out here willing to do what's necessary. God bless. I'll let someone else get a chance before you close off.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much. We're going to take our final call. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to first, set out praises or congratulations to this program for really bringing this topic and many topics to the forefront, because oftentimes you have ideas and you wonder if you're the only person that has that kind of thought going on. So this has brought it out and it's, bring people of like mind together. I don't know if this was discussed before, but in terms of leasing properties, I'm just wondering if it would be too far-fetched to say leasing like private properties then as well, where people who are not residents of the Cayman Islands are not allowed to buy but to lease properties, because there's a generation that's coming up and need to secure those as well.
But I think it was. I think I was involved in a proposal in Parliament in 1985 or 86 to discourage Caymanians from selling their land, but to lease it so that they had equity in whatever development was taking place there. And the outcry from the business community, that is where the label that they now apply to me as being anti-business started to generate. Combine that with the labor legislation that we brought forward and pension and health insurance and all that. Those are the reasons why many people in the business community try to label me as being anti-business and a bad person, but that can't hold water when you dig down into my track record.
Okay. And caller, you know that in the old days, our leaders, our forefathers never sold the land.
Exactly. We started
they leased it. Green Wall, they leased it.
That's right.
Even though they didn't get lot for the lease, but they leased it. They never sold it.
That's right.
And even though Mr. Ezra and Roy Borden was another advocate too about leasing the land instead of selling it.
Call him a communist for that.
Call him a communist for that. But it seems to me that we do not have a lot of men of substance anymore, and it seems to me that as long as you can flash $1 and a wallet and a briefcase full of newspaper, you can get anything in the Cayman Islands, even to the people's properties.
It's true. Okay. Also, if I may just say, I'd like to Quincy, twice now he's called in and he's bringing back things to mind that have slipped me now. It's been some years, to say the least, and I really appreciate what he did. But I agree with what he says about the lands, as there's some that's left for Cayman Brac, but I think Brackers need to be very careful too that they don't end up like Grand Cayman, where everything is in the hands of people, non-Caymanians, and you see no trespassing, private property, and all the rest of it. And particularly, it really enrages me to think that the government, the people's land, is being sold, particularly those which will give us the access to our beach, to our beach.
Water,
you know, that's as if that's supposed to be in foreign hands.
But I wanted to put up a red flag here. This idea of selling land, is not generated by the politicians. You need to understand that.
Oh no,
consultants.
By consultants, and they are the people who will have those kind of and the people in the community who are advocating for this are not the average middle class and low income Caymanians who need these pieces of property to get to the beach and to be developed in their favor later on. Yeah. These are people who will have money that they can just go out and as Miss Georgia said, just gobble it up.
That's right.
And it'll no longer be ours.
Okay. And one last point on that.
And understand that people talking about we don't have political lobbies here. Let me tell you something. We have some very powerful political action committees in this country.
Are you kidding?
The invisible hand.
Yes. And you know the law, I think it was the governor's vesting of lands law.
Yeah.
That was changed back during the time when I was in cabinet. I recall it, and I was actually caught up into it because the land which Mr. Miller had bought or was using for a hospital that didn't take place was the proposal was to use that for housing, and it had to be transferred from the hospital to another ministry and so forth and so on. It was taking time. What happened was that law was amended by sticking two words in there. What were they again about for education?
I think there's a subsection though, and I can't.
That it can be sold in cabinet. It should never be. It should be like it was before.
Should not come to the legislative assembly.
That it had to come to the legislative assembly and be debated before it could
because
be
you
sold.
see, if it comes down there, the people in my constituency can hold me accountable if I agree to sell off the property in my constituency. If it is done without my knowledge, how you can hold me responsible?
Exactly.
Miss Susan, will the LA be carried live today? Will be carried live as well, so we want to remind people of that. And any closing final comments, Mr. Miller?
It's a very important work that's going to go on in LA today. The strategic policy statement is a very important document, and I would encourage all Caymanians, particularly all voting Caymanians, to pay strict attention to the speech and to the debate that takes place afterwards.
Okay.
Because that is going to set the parameters for the next 2 years. Remember, we're not going to get another one of these now again till August 2019, which will be for 2021.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to thank everyone this morning. I want to thank my two co-hosts. I want to thank Mr. Miller for being here. I want to thank our listening and viewing audience for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension for the record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to help to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling Dwayne Banks at 12 noon for a talk today. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.